right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is about 10 seconds to 2 o'clock. So in the interest of living up to my expectations, I'm a very on-time person. My name is Mariko Yamada, and I've recently assumed the chair's position for this Committee of Aging and Long-Term Care, although I have been on the committee since last December. So I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this oversight hearing on the PACE program in California. Just before beginning and inviting our first guests up to present, I just wanted to say that I think it's quite an honor, in a sense, that the PACE program began in San Francisco, Chinatown, really, as On Luck, founded by a dentist, of which I am not, and a social worker, of which I am. So I'm not sure if that means you put your values where your mouth is or what, but I'm very glad that On Luck began in San Francisco, Chinatown, and continues to this day to be one of the premier models of integrating social and medical models to serve the most frail individuals in our community. I did also want to note that this is a very rare occasion upon which our Aging and Long-Term Care Committee hearing is being televised by Assembly TV on Cal Channel. So for those of my members that are not here, too bad. No. You've missed your spotlight for today, but I certainly hope that their non-participation today is really less related to their interest in this area, but more related to the fact that the multiple assignments that we all carry are preventing other members from joining us right now, and we hope that some of them will be coming in and out this afternoon. As far as the little roadmap for this afternoon, we have several pieces to get through, but it is my goal for us to, get through this discussions about, let's say, about 90 minutes, including public comment. That way you can sort of gauge and if we need to continue a little bit longer, that's fine, but I think this looks like about a 90-minute session to me. All right? So with that, and I also always want to thank the staff to this committee. They're the ones that keep us going and prepare us, and also my own staff in my assembly office for always being right there to help me with these proceedings. So with that, since I don't have any other committee members for comments, I'd like to go ahead and invite Cheryl Phillips, Dr. Cheryl Phillips, Chief Medical Officer for On Luck Lifeways, and welcome to begin the story of the history of PACE in California and an overview of the PACE model. And thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And heartfelt appreciation. This is an important topic. We have some challenges before us, but we're very proud of this remarkable model that serves our seniors so well. And so an appreciation and acknowledgement to you, Madam Chair, and to this committee for taking time to hear these questions out. And I'm looking forward to a dynamic discussion going forward. And we thought it would be most helpful, and I will be succinct and brief since it sounds like you have the history pretty well wired.
A little.
But I think it's useful if we're going to talk about the PACE model to give a context of what it is, who it serves, who is eligible, what are the benefits of the program, and how it's been replicated. So throughout this morning, you will hear references to various aspects of the program, to eligibility, and also to the 5 very important PACE programs throughout the state and our interest in expansion. So setting the context of this, I think, will be useful. You do have handouts. We aren't going to be so formal as to do PowerPoints, but there are slides in your packet. And so we'll pretend this is radio, and I'll talk along. We won't have a television screen. The original vision for On Luck, as you made reference to, Madam Chair, was to look at low-income seniors with specific needs, particularly in the Chinatown North Beach area. And at the time, and quite frankly now as well, there were no resources and no particularly long-term care resources in the community. This was back before adult day health. This was back before mini-service infrastructure was in place. So these seniors were often moving out of the area, out of their language, their culture, their family, into other counties across the bay, wherever they could find nursing home beds. And so the intent was to look at how needs could be addressed in a more unique model that would identify vulnerable at-risk elders at risk for nursing home placement who met state criteria, and to look to an alternative to institutional placement. The structure today, so it began as ONLOC, as you mentioned, which is the originator of the PACE model, and ONLOC serves over 1,000 frail elders now. We have over our course served over 1,800, but we serve now over 1,000 in San Francisco, Southern Alameda, and down into San Jose. So we're no longer just in Chinatown. 10 teams in 9 centers across the Greater Bay Area. Moving along, what is PACE? So PACE stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly. I laugh because there's a lot of PACE terms out there. People thought it was a sports car, or there's apparently an auto shop, because we were Googling all of the words for PACE. But we started PACE as the Program of All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly, which is a unique model unlike anything else currently in this country, because it combines the medical aspects, so primary care, access to specialty services, but all of the social network, because we know that the seniors that we love and the vulnerable elders in our communities are not the sum of their diseases. They are persons in their worlds and their environments. And we respect and understand that integrating the social supports and the family caregiver supports that you will hear more about this morning are as integral and important to their well-being as are their medical diagnoses and the care that we serve. But it blends not only the medical care and the social care, but the insurance rules, so we are both the payor but also the provider. And we also uniquely integrate Medi-Cal and Medicare financing. So truly, when we're spending a lot of time hearing healthcare reform, the discussions of care integration, the ultimate model, sort of the mother of all integration, really is the PACE program. It is paid, as you know, on what we call a capitation payment. So there is a payment per member per month, which comes from CMS, Medicare, and from Medi-Cal. The flexibility that this allows, though, is that because the PACE programs are now completely at risk, and what I mean by that is there is no carve-outs. Things get expensive, you don't go back to the state, or you don't go back to the federal government. If persons have particular needs, they're still covered within the scope of the PACE program. If they need to be in the hospital or they need to be in the nursing home, they're still in the PACE program, and all of that payment comes out of that capitated model. But it also allows the PACE programs to focus on the individual, what are their specific needs, and how to coordinate benefits. The history of ONLOC and PACE we'll touch just briefly, because we don't want to spend a lot of time looking backwards. We want to go forwards. But I think it is important to talk about, we mentioned the first ONLOC Center in the early 70s. It also was the first adult day health center as well, because this was all prior to a time that these were not in place. It then moved to, and as you mentioned, Marie-Louise Anzac, the social worker, and Dr. G, the dentist, moved to looking at what would it take. The terminology then was a medical home or a hospital without walls. That became the prototype for what we now refer to as the PACE program. We were then moved into the federal state waiver demo process in the early 80s. Replication began with Robert Wood Johnson funding in the later 80s, and then there was actually a second phase. The original phase of testing the replication model was then, and was funded with help from the Robert Wood Johnson. And then I also had the pleasure of being part of the next phase of replication, and here in Sacramento we started a PACE program known as Sutter Senior Care, and you will hear more from them. It became a permanent recognized Medicare model in 1997. That's important because no longer was it just a demo. It wasn't just an experiment anymore. Medicare recognized that it actually was a legitimate, credible, replicable model that had regulations, structures, and outcomes.
And if I just interrupt you just one second, I wanted to welcome my vice chair, Mr. Chris Norby, from Southern California, who has missed my opening remarks that we actually, none of us are getting any younger, so this is a very important committee, and we thank you for joining us. I know you have lots of things going on, but yes, we do.
Thank you for your kind
Thank you, and I just wanted to ask, in this replicable model, is it still correct that there are up to 20 per year that can be added under federal law? or is that not correct anymore?
I don't think there is a limit on the number. We are now up to 73. Our CEO, Bob Edmondson, is going to talk more about some of the national constructs for PACE, but there are 73 PACE sites across the United States now, 8 pending license. There was a demonstration for rural PACE that expanded to 14 rural sites, and we'll talk a little bit about how some of the other states, because that's an important question as we go through, is what are some of the challenges we have in California to replication and expansion?
Thank you.
And Assemblyman Norby, you should have a packet, and so if you want to follow along with the handouts, we do have some slides. So who benefits from the PACE program? Certainly the frail and vulnerable elders that we serve, also the family members. I think it's also important to notice that we work closely with the providers of care as well as the providers of housing, and certainly policymakers, and at a time when our state is looking for alternatives, both to meet Olmstead decision goals as well as our challenges with managing a very complex, expensive Medi-Cal recipient population. PACE becomes part of that solution, and in fact, my other hat, I'm sitting on some of the 1115 waiver work, and the PACE model is absolutely recognized as one of the solutions. So who do we serve? You have to be 55 or older. You have to be a resident in the service area of one of the PACE programs. So I always say it's at least 2 years older than anybody in the audience. And the important thing, you need to meet the state certified level of care to be nursing home eligible, and we're going to talk more about that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we have a question right now.
Yes. My questions aren't intended to be interruptions. I know.
No, this is an informal dialogue.
This is a dialogue,
yeah.
Right. 55 or older. This program is aimed toward frail elderly, right?
Correct.
And it always struck me that these minimum ages are really unrealistically low, and it gives the appearance of having this huge group of frail elderly, 56, even 64. Most would be, would you say 80s would be the average age, late 70s, 80s?
We're going to talk a little bit about the average age, and the average age in the ONLOC program is between 83 and 84.
Right.
So without a doubt, we serve an older group. But there is a reason why when Medicare was looking at this as an expansion model, frailty is not just defined by age. Frailty, when you really get back at the heart, frailty is defined by the functional limitations. And because there are persons who chronologically are younger, but who need help with managing their medical care, who need help with their activities of daily living, like eating, dressing, walking.
Now, there are such people that are that way their whole life. It's not related to age at all, like you say.
Absolutely.
But if you're like that and you're 54, this would not apply to you, only if you're 55 or above.
There was a cutoff, and CMS at the time, HCFA, was also looking at expanding. Remember, even the 65 cutoff for Medicare was an arbitrary number, because at the time,
They're all
in
arbitrary,
1962, right.
I'm just more comfortable with higher arbitrary numbers because it seems we're focusing more on those really in need rather than expanding it for those that aren't.
So the eligibility is defined, the age criteria is defined by Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, the reality is for the state of California, the average age is much older than that. Mm-hmm. And there are still some younger persons who benefit greatly and who have needs for the program and who are still Medicare, Medi-Cal eligible, still completely disabled. This is not for a younger healthy. So when you think of a younger age, don't think of someone who's riding their RV around town.
I think it
or
might be
playing
helpful in your
bingo.
presentation then, instead of even mentioning the 55 years or older, because it's saying what the average age is.
Well, and we will get there. So hang on, we do get there, but it is important because the eligibility is defined in federal statute. So we can't make up another number. It is what it is.
This
It
is
is
the
here, I
eligibility.
see on the next page.
But the participant profile. So let's move to what the typical participant looks like. In fact, the average age is in the mid-80s. So the population that's served, in fact, is a much older, frail population. Also a medically complex. On average, they have 13 medical conditions. So these are also not, the intent is not to be your healthy, out there playing golf, working 2 part-time jobs seniors. That's wonderful. This is really a program for those who have very, very specific complex needs and are dependent in over 3 ADLs. That's our nomenclature lexicon for activities of daily living: bathing, dressing, feeding yourself, going to the toilet, getting out of a chair, really basic functional tasks that if you can't do those, you are at very high risk of needing
Getting
nursing
out of a
home placement.
chair, I need help with that sometimes. The rest, I think I'm still doing most of the time.
We
Sometimes I get out
frequently
of this
joke
chair
that each
quickly
of us on a
and quickly
given
to
day
bed.
can come up with 1 or 2 that we need help with.
And if I have to get out of this chair quickly, it's because I've got a couple other.
2/3 of our participants have cognitive impairment, and that's kind of a shorthand way of saying dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or dementia from stroke. But so when you think of the PACE participant is typically female, in her mid-80s, a whole lot of medical conditions, is dependent for her daily care, and more than likely has some cognitive impairment. We also, an important thing about this program is people that very rarely do they float in and out. Most have heard me say the most common reason for discharge is celestial, which means that we actually take care of people throughout the journey to the end of their life. The most important thing, and I'm going to move along a little quickly, but certainly if you have questions, don't hesitate. The key piece about the PACE program is that it is team-based. This is like no other medical model. I'm a geriatrician. I worked in a large healthcare system here in Sacramento for many years. We talked a lot about teams, but nowhere else does a team really happen like it does in a PACE program. Every day, the team, which includes the doctors, the nurses, but also the therapists and the social workers and the nutritionists and the drivers and the direct care providers, the unlicensed aides, the entire team of people meet every day and talk about the seniors that are on their panel, usually about 150 in total. So we don't talk about all 150, but the point being is to that senior, they now have a network, a honeycomb of service and support that doesn't exist anywhere else, which includes their primary care, so that they aren't bouncing and fragmented between multiple sites of care. Care management is something that is talked a lot about. It's certainly throughout our health reform language. Medicare recognizes that the biggest problem to Medicare payment, and I will also to Medi-Cal for this state, is that vulnerable people with multiple medical problems bounce between lots of settings of care that don't speak to each other very well. That results in poor care, expensive care, redundant care, and absolutely chaos within a system for that vulnerable elder. Care management is really the center point of how the ONLOC team and care is coordinated, because once they're in our program, we are their safety net and their care providers, and we see them every day, and we follow them in the hospital, and we see them in the nursing homes, and we work with their families. The medical management piece, we look at the entire scope of the medical care. Again, there aren't carve-out pieces, so it is primary care plus. If you are a PACE participant and you're not feeling well, you don't have to wait until you get an appointment to your doctor in 2 weeks. You're seen that day if you're there in the center, usually the next day if we arrange for transportation. And it is the full scope of primary medical services. We talked about the financing. I won't go into the details again. It's important to know that about 95, 96% of our participants are what we call dually eligible to Medicare and Medi-Cal. And we can talk about the math of the rate setting, but there are two processes. On the federal side for Medicare, it is a risk adjustment based on how sick people are and a frailty adjustment. And on the state side, right now, it is set against the nursing home custodial costs based on the county, and we're at 90% of that. So the intent was by the state structure was to look at a savings opportunity from the get-go. And then this graph, and we won't go into details, you'll see how the dollars are broken out. So again, this pooled money is put together, and then these are the various ways that the funds are attributed to the services for the elder. So let's look at the summary rate. First of all, when we look at, these are all nursing home certifiable individuals, and yet 94% of them live in the community. On average, all of the PACE programs look at about 6% at nursing home care at any given time. That's an important statement because these are all persons who I would dare say could tomorrow walk down to your local nursing home. Now, not all of them choose to or want to, but the fact that we can keep 94% of them in the community is remarkable. We also lower hospital utilization, and PACE programs don't do that by denying services, but when you start care that's focused at the person with their goals, working with their family, you then don't rely on the hospital to be the safety net. So when you think about these persons duly eligible, yes, a lot of those costs are Medicare, but there's also Medi-Cal costs incurred in this high utilization rate that happens outside of the PACE programs. But because in the PACE program we're working so closely with people, we can anticipate needs, we can look to alternatives to hospital and nursing home placement. But most importantly, we focus on what's important to the person, what kind of care they want, what are their values, which ties into the end-of-life care, which is an important piece. All of us are very mortal, but our PACE participants are eminently mortal, and so part of what is important in the team planning is at the time of enrollment we start talking about advanced care planning. What are people's wishes, and how do we coordinate that to be person-centered and value-based across the settings of care, which interestingly ends up being less expensive care. Our end-of-life care is less than half of what the same frailty-matched seniors are in the community, and at the same time we have incredibly high satisfaction because we check that regularly. We now have a standardized tool that we're using across California, and the rates are incredibly high of persons who not only think positively of the PACE model, but are very, very supportive of the kinds of services that they get and how it makes a difference in their lives. And in fact, we're going to hear from someone about that. So in summary, these are the PACE program pieces in your handout. Bob Edmondson is going to talk more about that in a bit. But that's a quick overview of how remarkable the PACE model is. It's unlike anything else. Any questions? I'm conscious of time, so any questions that you have, and I'll move on to our agenda items.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll hold mine, since I must confess I've been kind of following these issues for about 15 years, and I'm very hopeful that we will have more members on this committee as well as throughout the legislature and both houses to get a little bit more excited about how we're going to address these public health and social services issues of the future. So thank you. If you're going to stick around there, or we're going to invite now. Okay. We are now going to invite up the next panel, I think. Should we invite them all together? The current status of PACE, perspectives from consumers, CalPACE, from existing providers and potential providers. So I'd like to invite Mr. Edmondson to come on up, as well as, I believe, is there a family caregiver joining us? Please join us. And Jennifer Spalding of Altamed Senior Winnicare, or George Searcy. Okay, very good. A little switch here from my earlier agenda. Sorry. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
We'll have our caregiver start.
Absolutely. How are you?
Fine, thank
Good.
you.
Thank you for coming to join us at our
Thank you
hearing
for
this
having
afternoon.
us today.
Sure, absolutely.
Honorable Assemblywoman Yamada, my name is Jan Float, and I am here today on behalf of my grandparents who lived their last 4 years as PACE participants. Before then, they always introduced me as their pride and joy. They also did that with my 3 younger siblings, but I know I'm really the one that they meant by that. So today I have the honor of speaking with you with pride and joy about my grandparents and about what the PACE program did for them and my family. As a committee that is very knowledgeable about aging and long-term care, I don't mean to be redundant, but I'm sure you're very familiar with Tom Brokaw's book on The Greatest Generation. My grandparents exemplified that to its epitome. They were religious, patriotic, honest, hardworking, do-it-yourselfers who were stoic, which led to being stubborn, which led to being obstinate, which led to being extremely difficult when it came to letting go of independence and letting us explain what we were seeing and understanding what we were experiencing with them. They were not able to do that. And so we were dealing with a couple who had one child and another one who was special needs. They'd been married for, at the time the PACE program came into their lives, 68 years, and had raised my uncle at home, Down syndrome, for 63 of those years. So they had some extraordinary challenges and some amazing joys that went along with that. They took delight in life's absolute simple pleasures, those things that we forget in this techno world that we live in. Hand-squeezed lemonade on a hot day, and it had to be that way. It couldn't be the concentrate. We'd sit on top of the homemade ice cream and then go pick the berries from the vine, and that's what we do on a summer day. Skipping rocks, just the little things that we forget can be so enjoyable is the way they absolutely live their lives. So now that I've explained to you that they really are our warm, cushy, genuine, never met a stranger people, that's when those elder years just all of a sudden crept in. Every year at Christmas when we would all get together, we would talk, Nana and Pops, we've noticed some changes in you. Well, when the time comes is what they would always tell us. Well, my mom, my sisters, and I are all geographically dispersed. Altogether, we've got 4 marriages, 4 careers, 7 children, and busy lives. And typically, I think, American. Unfortunately, I think we can learn from San Francisco, having been the genesis of the On Lock program, and the Asian culture, that we need to revere our elders just like we do our fragile newborns, except these people have life experiences that still need to be told. And I think we have it backwards here, and I'm really hoping that one of these days we're going to be able to catch up. That's another topic. However, because we are living our typical American lives, we didn't really have any wake-up calls until literally the fire department called me as the local caregiver when Nana had turned the teapot on at 4 in the morning, swears she turned it off, but somehow the kitchen burned down and half the dining room before the fire department got all 3 of them out. So that was our first big venture into serious problems. And then from there, we went to little things like I would go to their home at least on a daily basis, or we would talk 2 or 3 times daily as they were aging. And I would notice that prescriptions were piled up under the telephone, whole prescriptions unfilled. My grandfather would tell me from the South, babe, there's that dadgum man in the answering machine, and he keeps telling me that I missed a doctor's appointment. I didn't have a doctor's appointment. I didn't make one. Well, that's because my grandmother was psychologically and psychiatrically going into her dementia. At the same time, my grandfather was losing his physiological skills. They were able to compensate in public well. One had the mind, one had the body. Come together, married that long, they can mask it. But around family members, after the fire, after a few other things, we were noticing that there was some real problems. So one of those, and one of those that is, I think, true, a primary consideration for most families is the driving issue. I called DMV when Nana told me one afternoon on the phone that, oh, babe, the funniest thing happened today. We're driving down the street. I was asleep, and Pops fell asleep at the red light, driving. Oh, my goodness. They were both cracking up. Not so funny. I called DMV. DMV said you have to go through their primary care. So I was going to their doctor's appointments at that point, called the primary care and said, I'm coming in at the next appointment. Could you address this issue for me? We're leaving the appointment, still hasn't come up, and I whisper in his ear, driving. He turns to my grandfather and says, well, Ross, how's that driving coming these days? He said, well, I haven't hit anybody for a real long time. He said, okay, fine. I will let you know that just a year ago we received his no-test renewal on his driver's license. That would keep him driving until he was 97, 98. He had already passed away, and they also gave us his handicap placard. So there's a lot of...
Just automatically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's gone. So I called and took care of that. And not so nicely, I might add. We were having in our family a lot of distress, a lot of phone calls, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, a lot of house issue or visitation issues, doctor's appointments. I took off work because that became my full-time job. I haven't gone back since because we've been involved in other elder care issues. But right then is when a family friend told us about PACE. And I can tell you, it was like the white steed drives up to the house and rescues us and my grandparents. They were initially reluctant participants. They didn't want anything to do with anything that took them out of their home. But as per PACE's prediction, in 3 months, these people, both of them, were stabilized on their medications. They were taking fewer medications than those that were scripted up underneath the telephone. They had been seen and treated by a dentist, and they would not let us take them in for probably a decade. My grandmother had lifts in her orthopedic shoes that she refused to look at when I took her shoe shopping. This was by the great physical therapist over there. And she also had an appointment for cardiac surgery. This is within 3 months. It was a remarkable turnaround. At this point, my family was, for the first time, able to kind of go, I think we found what they need. And to be able to have them both, after being married for this long, under the same umbrella care in a day program where they had a sense of community again, is really like a miracle for us. They had lived to an age where their social lives had dwindled from a funeral in the morning and a funeral in the afternoon down to not being able to get to any of their activities that they enjoyed on time because of incontinence in the car, hitting other people. The list just goes on and on. So not only were they able to be treated well and with respect medically, but they were also participating in the activities and events that they were missing on the outside, which is they love their Bible study. And the exercise, be as little as it is, it got them moving with good music and the exercise balls, and they absolutely loved that. Playing the trivia games while they're eating a good, balanced meal. It just meant the world to them. They made friends. It was a new community. When my grandfather passed away, one of his, I can honestly say his dearest friend was Leroy, and he is the bus driver who took them to and from PACE on a daily basis. And I think if you were to ask these people who work locally, Leroy would say the same thing about my grandfather. That was a very, very real and deep friendship. without PACE, our family's credo could never have been carried out. And that is that these people, parents, grandparents, elder aunt and uncles, saw us into the world with unconditional love and support. It's our job to see them out of the world in like fashion. We could see this absolutely blowing up in our faces until PACE came into our world. And we were able to talk to my grandparents with the social worker and get all of their end-of-life wishes, which is such a gift to any family member, because of course you're grieving despite their elder age. There's a place in their heart, in your heart, that you'll always have for them, a hole that will never close. And we were able to fulfill their wishes and give them what they wanted, and do it in a way with the utmost respect and love, and not have to be literally trying to open their mouths and put a pill down their throats that they needed for survival. All of that onus was taken away from us and put on the shoulders of the professionals who were trained in geriatrics and who knew exactly what was needed. During that process, they transferred a lot of their knowledge to us. Right now, I'm kind of like a guru with my friends here in the community when it comes to their elder needs. These were my grandparents, not my parents. So my mother will be 75 this June. My father had passed away several years back. But now that I've had a number of experiences and losses, and they're just coming up on the driver's license issue, the, I'm going to call it over-stoicism, if I can use that, just downright stubbornness. I have a library of books. I have a head full of knowledge that was passed on to me by all of the different disciplines that work at PACE. And it is reverberating throughout our community long after my grandparents have graduated celestially. I like that word very much.
Very nice.
And they're at the big blue PACE in the sky. And now I'm able to pass on to my friends with their own treasured segments of this population, their loved ones going through the same thing, the wisdom and the philosophy that was taught to us by PACE. And we are having positive effects on other people's lives. So not only did PACE add quality and quantity to my grandparents, they also saved my family's sanity and educated us so that we're still in 3 different states, and we are able to help other people when they get, and refer the program when we can. On behalf of my grandparents, whose picture I have right here, and this is their last, they were married on the 4th of July. This was their last anniversary together, their 73rd, before we went out to the fireworks at the Tower Bridge. We had taken them over there in their wheelchairs, and they held hands almost the entire time. On their behalf, on behalf of my family and myself, it is my honor to publicly speak and to sing PACE's praises to you today. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you so much for that very, very heartfelt and really compelling story. I don't think anyone could have said it better. Although, as you were describing your grandparents, I took care of my mother for 23 years. And she was an older parent. When I was born, she was 36. So, it is indeed a challenge. I call it raising your parents.
Yes.
Because it is a little bit different. At the other end of the developmental scale,
Yes.
We are addressing, trying to slow down the losses, as opposed to, for children, we celebrate their development and their discovery. With elders, it is a little bit of the reverse.
Yes.
But it is no less important. In fact, it's probably even more important. And just wanted to comment, I appreciate your comments about some of the cultural differences, I think, that we see in how different communities are able to address elder care issues, and might give us this opportunity to say that in the 8th Assembly District, we are just literally today launching a little senior recognition, a centenarians recognition, which is not uncommon. I know that the President, of the United States have been sending greetings to 100-year-olds, but with the number of centenarians in our midst, we are recognizing there's a national holiday in Japan that has been celebrated for the last 40 years called Keiro no Hi, which literally means respect for the aged day. And I'm not advocating for another national holiday or another state holiday, so everyone can calm down there. But I think that it is celebrated the third Monday of every September in Japan. And it literally is. It's a national holiday. Everything's closed, and you go visit your grandparents.
That's lovely.
So stay tuned for Keiro no Hi, all right? So thank you. And next, we're going to invite Mr. Edmondson, right?
My name is Bob Edmondson.
Yes.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I will be brief. My task is to tell you that this story could be replicated around the United States. We've seen PACE grow from the ONLOC model, if you will, ONLOC assisted in the replication, but it's expanded even further around the country. So now you've got, as Cheryl said earlier, 73 that are licensed with participants and 8 more in the queue. There's been a push for the development of rural PACE, right? There's a little map there that shows where they are. Some states have been active in supporting PACE to the point of funding the development of PACE. Virginia is one of those. They initially did an RFP for 6 programs. They've got another RFP out for 2 more. So we're seeing a lot of interest in this model. If you look at the continuum of care, and Assemblyman Norby was kind of focusing on why 55 and not 65, I wasn't there at the beginning, but the point is the intent was to deal with some who are, in essence, disabled. In other words, age, it wasn't the indicator. It was basically the ADLs and the other circumstances of their life. So other states have led the way. That's exciting. But California, we have our own little CalPACE organization. I'm proud to be the chair. One of the founding 5 organizations. They're all here today, save and except for St. Paul's PACE, and they couldn't make it today. But you'll see representatives from each of them. That organization works with the state. You'll hear us talk. Eileen Kuntz will be talking a little bit more about how we work with the state. Our effort is to be cooperative and to have things work out. There are some issues that you'll hear about. But essentially, we're, the goal of CalPACE is really to help expand PACE in California. We have peer group meetings so that IT can work together and other things like that. And CalPACE owns and is, in essence, spreading this particular instrument for participant satisfaction that Dr. Phillips mentioned earlier. So CalPACE has a worthwhile role. It's small, only 5 members, hopefully more soon. And
easier to make a decision with only 5 people, though, isn't it?
we would like more.
Try 80.
Yeah. So and in terms of the absolute number, California has statutory permission for 10, but there's no federal limit on the number of PACE organizations. But California, there is a limit. So just real quickly, in terms of what we are, to get up around 10,000 feet and look at PACE, the emphasis we want to place is on the provider side. Although we are a carrier, we take risk, right? Both government, state, and federal believe that we're, managing risk well for them. But the fact is we provide the care. So unlike other insurance companies and HMOs, we are the provider. It's a staff model. It has, the majority of the caregivers on a day-to-day basis are employees. So that is important to keep in mind as we get into the regulatory environment. The other thing I would just say is that it does meet a lot of the goals that we've all heard about. I'm sure all of us have read the 2,300 pages of the health reform bill. We are those things, okay? We are the medical home. You can't beat PACE as a medical home. It is the locus of care. We are accountable. We're highly regulated. And I think it's just important to reflect on the fact that it's proven. There are a lot of experimental things. There's some demonstration issues. There are things that are going to come up in the 1115 waiver discussion. We're proven. We've been around. You know, the idea was a gleam in the dentist's and the social worker's eye in 1972. It's a long time.
71, oh, yeah, 72.
So anyway, I wanted to just
Thank you.
say that. I know we're pressed for time a little bit, but,
It's fine.
but
No, we
George
appreciate
Searcy is here representing Hope Through Housing. So why don't you
Thank you very much, Mr. Edmonds. Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Sir.
Thank you, Chair Yamada. As Bob says, my name is George Searcy, and I represent the Hope Through Housing Foundation. I am the executive director, and we work in 20 low-income apartment communities throughout California and also in Arkansas, dealing with geriatric social work services, which I understand
Thank
you're
you.
very familiar
I'm very
with.
happy about all of you social workers there. We love you all.
And we appreciate your support. But essentially, I'm pleased to be here today as a potential PACE provider to represent that segment of the provider community out there who sees PACE and the wonderful things that it can do and has done, demonstrated it can do for our low-income, elderly, frail populations, to provide a continuum of care that is, in my opinion and in my experience, second to none in terms of making an impact in our national dialogue about how we care and transition people through the system of health care. Essentially, we are located in San Bernardino County, and the place we've identified to provide our PACE program is in the city of Fontana. So the center would be located in Fontana in San Bernardino County, and we would serve the central part of San Bernardino County and also parts of Riverside County. For those familiar with the issue of access to primary care for low-income elderly in those two counties, you're probably familiar with the issue that in terms of state funding for care for those communities, we receive some of the lowest per capita reimbursement rates in the state. In fact, I think Riverside is close to the bottom in terms of reimbursement, and San Bernardino County is near the bottom. So finding, for the team of people that I work with on a daily basis, finding a model like PACE that provides an opportunity to deliver the kinds of services we hope that all people have access to, and many people who are in higher income categories do have access to, is nothing short of extreme delight. I would say that some of the challenges that await us as we are preparing our application to the state for our license is that we have to initiate a fundraising drive. We estimate the total cost, capital cost of starting our project at $10 million. That includes the capital construction, includes all of the equipment purchasing, it includes startup operating costs. And that's in addition to the fact that the city of Fontana is so excited about the potential to have this project located in their community that they've donated the land.
Very good.
They've made plans to secure that for us, and they're waiting some other decisions by the state of California before they identify whether or not they can help us even more. So the economy is clearly providing lots of challenges, not only at the state level, but in the capital markets as well, which makes the financing and fundraising programs that we're having to engage in very challenging.
If I may ask, is this land in a suitable location?
It's actually in a wonderful location.
Okay.
It happens to be near the 10 freeway, if you're familiar with San Bernardino County. It's near the intersection of Sierra Avenue and the 10,
Okay.
which is near the Riverside-San Bernardino County border. And in that region, there are actually 14 low-income senior housing development projects. It's very intense in terms of serving that population. My staff...
Co-location is actually
Co-location
very
is
smart.
key. Limited time to travel to our facility will be a major advantage for us.
Thank you.
So we're grateful to the City of Fontana. We're grateful to this committee. I just wanted to say, finally, that it's so important to be able to as a mission-oriented nonprofit organization to find means of both delivering quality services and financing those quality services. So speaking as a nonprofit organization, we find that the PACE model, because it restricts most of the delivery of these services to the nonprofit community, that there's an advantage to that in that it enables most of the income from the delivery of the services to be redirected back into service delivery. But it also means that you really have to build, as the California PACE Association is attempting to do, a set of high-capacity providers in the state of California to enable our programs to succeed. So I'm very grateful to be able to represent San Bernardino Riverside County here, and we look forward to being able to open our first PACE facility in that region.
Well, we look forward to that. Actually, on the other side of my family, which is the Chinese side, my husband's side, the family was from Riverside. So, so we've got all parts of the state covered. Yeah.
You certainly
It's
represent.
either that or I've lived, worked, or studied in Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and now here. So it sort of sounds like I couldn't keep a job or something. I've moved around. I also spent 10 years in the East Coast. So I think it's important, to have that kind of global perspective, so that none of us has all the bright ideas ourselves. We should be able to take ideas that are best and best resourced and best practiced and replicate them, and that's exactly what PACE is doing. So, well, I look forward. Maybe I'll get to come down to
Thank
the
you.
grand
Well,
opening
we will make sure and
sometime.
invite you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. So let's now move to our next panel. Oh, excuse me. I have an existing provider. I apologize. That's right, because I had called everyone up, but there weren't enough seats.
Quite all right.
We are still in the current status of PACE, and we're now going to hear from Jennifer Spalding on some perspectives from existing providers. So
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I want to thank you for allowing us to be here this afternoon, and to ladies and gentlemen in the audience. My name is Jennifer Spalding, and I'm the Vice President for Senior Care Services with the Altamed Health Services Corporation. Altamed is a federally qualified community health center that has been serving communities in Southern California for over 40 years. Altamed is propelled by the belief that quality health care is a basic human right, and Altamed remains dedicated to serving individuals and families across all generations. This goal is achieved by providing primary medical, dental care services, as well as long-term and geriatric programs aimed at keeping each family member healthy for life. The programs and the strategies that we're putting together are really trying to have the complete, not just integrated services for the seniors, but for the whole family. So we tend to say from the cradle to the grave, we have all of the services there. All of our services are provided in a linguistically and culturally sensitive manner to the underserved low-income communities in both Los Angeles and Orange counties. In 1996, Altamed opened its first program for all-inclusive care for the elderly, the PACE program. I joined Altamed 5 years ago, and honestly, when you went onto the website and someone said, come do PACE, all you could find was exercise equipment, okay? You couldn't find anything. So I had to go ask a whole lot of people, what is this thing? I have to tell you, as a person who's learned about this in the last 5 years, I am truly a convert. I am also a registered nurse. I started off as a pediatric nurse, and believe me now, working with my seniors, I have my babies at the other end of their life cycle. And it is truly something that's still satisfying, and I get my nursing fix by working with this population. It is a managed care program. You've heard a lot of the discussion from all the presentations, and there's more details to come. In the interest of time, I will try to skip about. Don't ignore the number of pages I got, okay?
You can, and by the way, everyone is invited to submit, whatever testimony in writing too,
Well,
so we can
thank
put
you.
it all together.
Well, I think, too, by the time, the fun part is when you get a chance to speak after 5 people, they've said half your speech, so you can eliminate stuff, okay? Altamed programs.
Last name is Y. you
Okay.
know, I
Yeah,
wait
I
till
know.
the end.
Yeah, and I got the S, so I'm way at the back too, so I got this, okay? The Ultimate PACE program makes it possible for those who are frail and meeting the nursing home eligibility criteria to live with dignity and pride in their homes while receiving the care they need at or through our PACE programs. Besides all the services we're providing, you've heard about the interdisciplinary team. You might hear frequently about the multidisciplinary team. The concept there tends to be that every discipline does their own thing. The strategy here with interdisciplinary is the fact and acknowledgement that all the disciplines must work together to have a coordinated, effective care plan for providing the quality of care that our seniors will need to have. The costs are being provided, paid for by the Medi-Cal and Medicare population. Besides the therapies, you've heard a lot of the description about the services that are being provided. We've also included aquatic therapy. We had a number of our seniors who were having difficulty with the movement, couldn't quite go to the physical therapy. We started aquatic therapy. Of course, we had to bribe them to get them to say, you can't go to the pool unless your blood pressure is under control, your blood sugars are under control. So we tried to use incentives to make sure they were working towards this. It was fun for them doing the aquatic therapy because the hot topic was what bathing suit they were going to get to wear. So the bikinis was a big discussion among the seniors, believe it or not, okay?
I love it.
Okay, for our Ultimate program, we've had our primary site since 1996, but we opened 2 other sites in just the last 2 years. We do believe in the concept, and we think there's a lot of value, and there's a lot of need and potential for what we're doing here. We're seeing, too, that recognized as the nation's most innovative provider for all-inclusive medical and social care for the elderly. But we also see with the dementia care and this caregiver support, we are providing approximately 70 hours of in-home support services to our patients as an average. We have some that are getting less and some are more, but for our population, we have an average of about 70 hours a month in caregiver support that we're adding. Not all the families have the children and the grandchildren that can help them. We have a number of others that still need to have additional support, and again, the strategy is to allow them to live safely and effectively in the community. So what can we do to work with that? And again, that's supplementing that with the caregiver support. This is a particularly important considering that the aging population who is utilizing this program is growing rapidly in the next decade. I can say this because Assemblyman Norby is not here. He's just in denial. You know, we are all going through this thing.
I remind him of that.
Okay. Baby boomers are turning into senior boomers, and there's a whole lot of us. Okay, and I do deny because I have to tell you about 20 years ago, I selected the age of 39, and I've been stuck there, okay? So it's working for all of us. But it is a quality service that is available, and it needs to be out here for a lot of the seniors. Our dedication is to compassionate care, which allows us to help the seniors live with dignity and comfort in their home while giving the respite care to the family members. A lot of those seniors are still home, and they're wearing out the rest of the family. We need to come back with a strategy that allows the family to remain intact. We've talked already about the criteria that's there. Our participants have an average of 9 medical conditions that are impacting their daily and medical function. They're needing assistance with at least 3 of their activities of daily living. In one of the documents that you all have, there's a profile for each one of our different programs that tells you the average age and the profile of the patients that we're having there. We have about 98% of our patients are still living at home with family or caregivers. That's a lot of what we're doing, and we're supplementing and supporting that with the use of in-home support workers working with them.
So if I may just ask, so you do partner with the public authority?
No, actually, when the person enrolls in the PACE program, in-home support services have to be a part of the program only. They come out of the county program, so that could be considered duplicate payment. So, but it is something that we provide, and we think it's worth it for us to invest in that, basically in helping those patients to stay out of the facilities to be able to live safely at home. So it's been a worthwhile investment for us to work with that. For almost 30 years, Ultimate has been a provider for senior services in LA and Orange County. We are also providing, besides the PACE program, we have adult day health care centers. We have 7 adult day health care centers. We're also operating an MSSP, multi-purpose senior services program, and the ICMP program. So there's a lot that we're doing with really the integration of senior care services. We're looking to make sure that we're getting the right program for the right patient so that we can put them or have them placed or even transition from one program to to the other. We've had a couple of times that we've had some of our seniors were made such good progress with our program, we were able to graduate them. We don't discharge them because they don't like to be discharged, but they do graduate whenever they've showed tremendous progress in what they've been able to accomplish in working with the program. We have pride in that, and that's something that we really look forward to in working with them. In working with the PACE program, are there challenges? Of course there's challenges, and that's with really what we're doing. We're serving a very frail population. We're trying to keep them out of the hospital. You're working with family dynamics that we have to keep involved with. We're also very concerned about, there's a lot of discussion going on about the dual eligibles that's going on. We want to make sure, too, that as these options are being considered for integrating services, we are already a program that integrates both, are using the Medi-Cal and Medicare services effectively. We're using those services without limits on those benefits, and we've been able to integrate what's going on with those and coordinate those care. We want to make sure as new strategies are developed or introduced that they are still including the PACE model. It's a viable model. It's already demonstrated what can be done with the integration of care. We want to make sure that PACE is included in those strategies. I am also going to be serving as a member on the advisory committee for the 1115 waiver, and everything that I'm going to do is going to continue to advocate for PACE. For the level of care certification, we're working with the program that says that everybody that we're trying to get in the program has to be approved by the state. We are working with that. That has been a good process for us. A challenge is that we are finding sometimes eligible individuals are having to wait to go through the process. Sometimes the delay may have been significant, but that's a strategy we're working on in partnership with the state to get that better streamlined. Another issue is just the whole issue we talked about, expansion. We've done well. In the last 2 years, we've had a lot of good teamwork with the state. We've been able to open 2 more sites. But there's nothing to say that the expansion process may not benefit from a little streamlining, minimizing redundancies as we try to bring on new sites, as well as the expansion of existing sites. For everything that we're doing here, it's just to say that together we need to ensure that our frail older population continue to have options and are able to live with pride and dignity that they deserve, and we want to be partners in ensuring that outcome.
Thank you very much. And I think that is an important point about the eligibility for IHSS and PACE are exclusive.
Right.
So perhaps we need to take a look at some of that too, right?
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Now we're going to move to a panel on key issues, and we're going to invite up Peter, is it Sutu, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Center for Elders Independence. Also, we return Cheryl Phillips, Dr. Phillips, with Unlock Lifeways.
I'm back.
And then Eileen Kuntz, Director of Policy and Government Relations for Unlock Lifeways. Welcome back, and welcome, Mr. Sutu.
Hi, I'm Peter Zutu. I'm the President and CEO for the Center for Elders Independence. We're headquarters in Oakland, California, but we serve most of the East Bay, the flatlands of the East Bay. All of our participants of about 441 currently are Medi-Cal eligible, so it's all a low-income population. We have about 14% of our population is on Medi-Cal only. Mm-hmm. What I would like to speak on is the concept of choices and the right for people to be able to choose the kind of care that would be best for that particular family, and that's services for that individual. It's important to have choices because not every, one size fits all. And as we are looking at the 1115 waiver, it appears that we're driving the seniors and people with special needs towards a managed care situation. We have been around 30 years or so now. Center for Elders Independence has been around for over 17 years, and we would like to be a part of those choices that are considered. We are, as mentioned previously, we are a medical home. We are accountable care program. We're a managed care program that are provided and also community-based. Unlike other programs, managed care programs, we're not about to pick up and leave any territory because the market is not there, okay? we are part of that community, and we will be there for a long, long time, we hope. Looking at the 1115 waiver, and if we're driving towards managed care, we certainly are the people that have shown for the longest period of time and proven to be effective and cost beneficial for both the participants that are in our programs and for the payers. And we also are looking at issues with county organized health systems. Mm-hmm. As you know, county organized health system is federally authorized, and in the authorization, one of the unintended consequences was making those county organized health systems be exclusive of any other provider that may be along. So we work with the Alameda Alliance very, very closely, and you know, we're working very well together. And as they move forward to become they would like to become a county organized health system, we are in agreement that, you know, PACE will continue as a carve-out, as something that other Medi-Cal only as well as dual eligibles can choose which ones would they like to have. Also looking at expansions of existing county organized health systems. Current ones are expanding into different counties, and the exclusivity will continue to move on. So we're trying to work on either a basis of getting legislative changes, technical changes in federal level to allow county organized health systems and PACE to coexist, or to have a solution at a state level. Those are the concerns we have regarding access and choices. That PACE will always be an option that for every frail senior in California may be able to access. And of course, geographically, that means that we have to grow. Mm-hmm. And we have to expand and have to be able to serve all of the people in California. I believe Pennsylvania is the only state in the country right now that has every county in Pennsylvania covered by a PACE provider. Mm-hmm. And we would like to do that. And since we began it, we should have been the first one there.
That's true. I was going to say, we started it, but maybe they had more progressive thought in Pennsylvania. I don't know. We'll have to check that out. Thank you, Mr. Sutu. Appreciate that. And next, we will hear from
Great.
Eileen.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. My name is Eileen Coons. I'm the Director of Policy and Government Relations for ONLOC. I'm going to talk briefly about some opportunities that we see for streamlining the PACE regulatory framework. As you've already heard, PACE covers all Medicare, Medi-Cal services, and services that are identified by the interdisciplinary team as needed for the person to remain in the home. And they covers a wide variety of settings, the PACE Center, as well as homes and institutions. When ONLOC and the other PACE programs first developed under waiver demonstrations, it was seen that an adult day health care license, a community clinic license, and if skilled nursing services were provided in the home, also a home health license were required. But in 1997, when PACE became a permanent part of Medicare, there was also federal regulations that were very PACE specific that were added at the federal level that applied to all PACE programs. In addition, during that period, a contract from Medi-Cal was also added. So what we see is a lot of duplication between some of the federal regulations as well as some of the PACE provider license or the provider license that have been required of PACE programs in the past. For example, ONLOC, in order to serve about 1,000 seniors, we hold 19 separate provider licenses in addition to a 3-way agreement with the federal government and state government as well as a Medi-Cal contract. In 2004, with funding from the California Endowment, a regulatory integration project was begun, which brought together both our federal and state regulators as well as provider and consumer advisory groups to look at how could we streamline the regulatory structure. This process resulted in AB 847 coming to fruition, which basically created a framework for allowing state regulators to grant exemptions when it was shown that it would, without those, there was a conflict and that there could be no harm to patient care or any kind of in terms of patient rights and any kind of a problem. So we have had some opportunity to work with the state regulators on this for a time. We're very pleased that there has been some appropriate exemptions granted, but I think that what we see is that the process is still cumbersome and that it's taking longer to get exemptions approved and such. And we believe there's more opportunities to streamline. I think that, we see a lot of opportunities, particularly in the startup process for new centers and new PACE programs. And we have had some discussions with the department about this and are looking forward to working with them further. Last year, there was Assemblymember Lowenthal did author AB 577, which was an opportunity to kind of address some of the concerns. And what it became clear is there needed to be really more discussion with the department on some of these issues. And our next step will be to meet with the Department of Health Services and the Department of Public Health. Mm-hmm. But our hope is that we will be able to report back to you with some proposals and after meeting with them on some possible ways, as we really see that we want to keep as much, if there's unnecessary duplication or conflict, that we see that as a problem, not a good use of resources for the PACE programs, not a good use of resources for the state, and our hope is to try to address some of those in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know we have some representatives from the department, so we'll be looking forward to hearing from them too. And
thank you
welcome
again.
back.
Yes, thank you. So I want to focus on a couple of two areas of challenge that the California PACE organizations are facing that impact, because our commitment, and you've heard without being redundant, that our commitment is that the frail and vulnerable seniors in the state, where they are in the service area, and have the option, have access to a PACE program. We know that the criteria is based on Title 22. I won't go into the specifics. Certainly you may be familiar with it and have access to it, but there is SNF A or SNF B criteria, basically at a skilled nursing level or an intermediate care facility level of criteria. And in 2007, the Department of Health Services was reorganized, and the nursing home certification was moved to long-term care division. This created some new and important challenges for us, and we've recognized that organizations and their needs to reorganize. We have certainly worked in good faith and consistently and persistently with the state and Department of Long-Term Care, but we'll talk in two specific areas where we continue to not have a resolution of how to make this meaningful and substantial in terms of the access of the we believe eligible seniors and the ability to work with the state in a timely manner. So the first area is specifically about timing. Prior to 2009, the process was that the PACE organizations could enroll the senior and then submit the eligibility criteria, and then could go back for a retro. The state changed that to it now requires their deeming eligibility first. When you add also the furloughs and some of the issues within the department that are very understandable, and we recognize and share the discomfort that they have in being able to meet that, it is still translated to real cases of delays. Right now, 37% of the cases submitted, these are for initial, between January 1 and now, are still pending. Over a third of our cases, that means seniors that are still waiting to hear what happens to those seniors. In the month of April alone, 3 of them were hospitalized. We've had multiple cases going to the nursing home, multiple cases where families are scrambling either out of their area, moving their loved ones. You heard from our family caregiver what it took to coordinate this orchestra of care, and that's what the families are doing in the interim to try to make things work. And in fact, we have nursing home placements during the time period that we're waiting for responses from the state.
And I might add a higher cost.
At,
to the
yes,
state,
at a higher
if for
cost.
state eligibility anyway.
And with a lot of other redundant, expensive services and in and out of the hospital, so there's higher Medicare costs, which then translate to higher Medi-Cal costs because they come back at a higher level of care. So it just continues to expand.
So if I can just insert, and I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Bonnie Lowenthal, who is our immediate past chair. And thank you, Bonnie, for joining us for this portion of the discussion. So prior to this change, was it on the basis of presumptive eligibility that you would enroll a PACE participant?
The PACE organizations would take
and it was
the risk.
retroactive.
Because if they were denied, then the state wouldn't go back and pay them for services that they weren't eligible for. So we would take that risk, if you were, enroll them, get the paperwork submitted, and then start with the calendar month.
And I mean, this question may be something I will ask the department later, but was there a percentage that you can recall in terms of your presumptive eligibility enrollment, if that's the correct term, that were denied?
Yeah, well, that's in fact a very, very good point. And this also relates not only to the timing, but the Title 22 interpretation.
Yes.
So specifically to answer your question, in 2008, this is for ONLOC data, less than 3% of our initials ended up not meeting state eligibility criteria. We are now above 11%, almost a fourfold increase. We don't believe that the seniors have changed. We don't believe that the intent of the program has changed, but we do believe that the focus on the criteria has shifted over this period of time. So one, not only are we seeing people delayed in their service, so the time delay, we are looking at an average time of 39 days from initial submission to hearing from the state. These vulnerable seniors don't have 39, 40 days to wait. Usually they're coming to us at a time of personal or family crisis.
Well, it's generally an acute episode that
or the
drives
family
us,
that
or
has just said
has
we're
come
done,
to
we're
a point we
tired.
can't handle it.
Or the spouse is no longer there and you have the frail remaining spouse who can no longer live alone.
Well, I'm sure there was probably a good reason why the change occurred, so I'll be interested in hearing that. But
we don't doubt. We are just, what we're
Yes.
trying to relate is that the fact
what the
is
real
we have
time
the impact to
effects has
the
been,
seniors in the
yes.
community is there's now a delay.
Right.
The interpretation of Title 22 nursing facility criteria, let's talk a little bit about this. We are concerned that the Department of Healthcare Services has in fact modified their interpretation. We both recognize that the document itself hasn't changed in decades. In fact, that is part of the problem because it was written close to 30 years ago for an institutional population, and we're trying to fit it and mold it into a community living environment with an alternative to institutional care. But where the focus has moved is prior to the new evolution of interpretation, and I will add the way most states look at PACE eligibility is an integration of medical complexity with functional dependency and social support needs, so that it really became like a Venn diagram of overlapping circles. The department has shifted the focus that the priority is first daily skilled needs. Our belief is that, first of all, we don't agree with the interpretation, but how that has translated is that in the first quarter of this year, 2010, 21% of our initial cases were denied because they didn't meet daily skilled nursing criteria, and another 31% were deferred. This has caused confusion in the communities, to the referring agencies, to the providers, the PACE organizations themselves, because it seems like the persons that we took care of for the last, in ONLOC's case, almost 30 years, now no longer meet eligibility. I have a couple of cases, and I'll just 30 seconds because I know we're short of time, but to give you an idea of what it's meant by not meeting daily skilled nursing needs. So one example is an 84-year-old Chinese man. He has macular degeneration, so he has very poor vision. He's had multiple falls. He's unable to put in his own eye drops, but he doesn't have a lot of other complex medical needs. However, he has fallen enough that he has been hospitalized several times and was referred to us after his most recent hospitalization, which included a nursing home placement for rehab. He was denied because there was no evidence of daily skilled nursing need. because it was felt that once his rehab was done, that there wasn't a nurse needing to be there. Well, we recognize the importance of the nursing element, but the medical construct of the senior is not in isolation to the rest of their needs. Another woman, again Chinese, because in San Francisco that's a very broad population that we serve. This is a woman who is in her late 70s. She needs assistance in her activities of daily living, mainly supervision, but she needs support in all of the other, we call them instrumental, like buying food, preparing food, paying bills. She's had a prior stroke. She has high blood pressure, but it's controlled. She was recently found down outside of her apartment and was put in the hospital for dehydration, and that resolved, and she was then referred to the PACE program, but she was denied because she didn't have daily skilled nursing needs because her blood pressure was controlled on the medicines that she was taking. Well, and our premise, if she took the medicines. Right. But the challenge again is that if daily skilled nursing needs are looked in isolation to the broader context of the person, and we're not saying that daily skilled nursing needs are unimportant, they aren't just the only element of criteria. We are also being faced with, and I could go through a long list, and I know that you've heard some of the other programs, of participants that we've served for years who now don't meet the new criteria of daily skilled nursing and are being disenrolled. They have no contacts with community providers. They don't have a primary care network. Many of them, one person in particular, the physician wrote in the note, this person will die outside of the PACE program. We are her network of services. That particular case is, we requested more review, and it's so now in a deferral state, but was initially felt that it didn't meet eligibility. We have received legal opinion, the California PACE organizations, and believe we have received legal opinion that supports our belief that the interpretation is not what the intent of Title 22 was. That has been submitted to the department, and we're respectfully waiting their response and review as well. But these are two particular areas, both the delay and the interpretation of Title 22, that are facing real challenges for serving those vulnerable elders in the communities that we already are in, let alone our desire to expand into broader communities, as Peter Zutu referred to. So thank you very much. I want to just make a quick reference to this graph, because sometimes pictures tell 1,000 stories. And when I'm saying stories, every one of those is a vulnerable senior. If you look at this bar graph, what is important to note are the red and blue bars. Those represent denials and deferrals, respectively. This is over a period of time dating back to January 08, so we aren't even going back into the dark ages. You can see the dramatic increase just recently and the impact that that's had in seniors trying to access a program for the first time or trying to stay into the program.
This is just coincidental with the transfer from one area, one branch to the other, or to the, is that correct?
This is the entire time.
Yeah, this is the entire time frame.
Okay.
So this starts at January 08 and goes all the way up to current.
Okay.
And we can talk more about the
Right,
specifics.
but it was at, but it was
After the change.
exactly. It was, well, when I meant coincidental, I meant at the same time of the transfer, following the transfer. All right. Any questions from Ms. Lowenthal? No?
Thank you.
All right. Well, we thank you very much. I think we're doing pretty well on time. I would like to now invite the Department of Healthcare Services Long-Term Care Division. What a time, a segue that you get to present and maybe answer some of our questions today. And thank you very much. We welcome you, and please begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Member Lowenthal. I am Paul Miller. I'm Chief of the Long-Term Care Division at the California Department of Healthcare Services. I would like to briefly address two important issues related to California's program of all-inclusive care for the elderly. First, the Department's vision for PACE in California, and second, our commitment to continue streamlining PACE program requirements. The Department shares the belief with California's PACE programs that providing elderly and disabled participants with a comprehensive package of benefits and coordinated case management tailored to each participant results in improved quality of life, longer time periods that participants can live in their communities, and delivery of primary, acute, and long-term care in the most integrated settings. Successful operation of California's PACE programs, replication of the PACE model across the country, and federal recognition of PACE as a permanent provider type under state Medicaid programs point to the impact value that PACE provides its participants, their communities, local health and social service provider networks, and state and federal regulatory and funding agencies. The Department is committed to approving new PACE program applications up to the statutorily authorized level of 10 programs and expanding the number of PACE sites for existing programs by 10 to 12 sites. This would be up from the current number of 5 programs with a total of 20 sites. Additionally, 3 potential PACE providers have recently expressed interest, with 1 PACE applicant currently under review. It is the Department's goal to streamline processes that would make it less cumbersome to PACE programs while maintaining a sufficient level of oversight to ensure the safety and well-being of participants. Over the last several years, in collaboration with California PACE programs, the Department has streamlined California's PACE requirements, application review process, program monitoring and oversight, and PACE eligibility, as I will proceed to outline. Streamlining of California state licensing requirements for PACE organizations has been effected, as Eileen mentioned, by the passage of AB 847 and AB 577. AB 847 was implemented in recognition that state requirements applicable to PACE programs are in some instances duplicative, conflicting, and inconsistent with the federal PACE regulations and other state requirements specifically adapted to the PACE model for providing care services. AB 847 gave the Department of Health Services the authority to grant exemptions to a PACE program from licensing requirement related to adult day health care centers, clinics, and home health agencies. Examples of exemptions requested as a result include comprehensive discharge plan, integrated medical records, and site-specific exemptions from ADHC licensure. AB 577 further expanded upon this authority by allowing PACE organizations now to submit an organizational-wide exemption request, which would be applicable to each PACE center operated by the PACE organization. AB 577 also codified that certain federal requirements of the PACE model not be waived or modified, and that the provision of a universal PACE benefit package for all participants, regardless of payment source. AB 577 also recognized the Department's split and reorganization, which occurred in July 2007, and it expanded the authority granted by AB 847 to apply to both the Department of Health Care Services and the Department of Public Health. The continual streamlining of the application review process for new PACE providers, as well as expansion applications, has been a constant and ongoing process for DHCS. The department has spent the past several years working in conjunction with CalPACE to develop standardized templates to be utilized by new and existing PACE organizations. These templates satisfy federal and state requirements PACE organizations are obligated to meet. Once approved, the standardized templates are posted on the DHS PACE webpage and are available to be downloaded by existing PACE organizations and new applicants. Submission of standardized templates with a new or expansion application streamlines the process by eliminating the time that would be needed to review previously unapproved policies and procedures. The department has also worked to further streamline the PACE application process by developing and updating on an ongoing basis specific work plans outlining the submission, review, and approval process and timeline for both new and expansion applications. These work plans are also available on the DHCS PACE webpage. With respect to program monitoring and oversight, as also previously mentioned by others, DHCS has taken steps to limit the number of site review visits that PACE programs were previously subject to from various state and federal entities. DHCS now schedules site reviews concurrently with the biannual site review CMS is required to conduct. In addition, prior to new sites opening, DHCS must conduct a readiness review visit for final approval. We make every possible attempt to schedule this review concurrently with the California Department of Public Health's licensing and certification surveys and limit the disruption caused by site reviews while maintaining sufficient level of oversight. Regarding the determination of PACE eligibility, effective September 1, 2007, it is true that nursing facility level of care reviews and determination for initial and annual PACE recertification was transitioned from the DHCS Medi-Cal field offices to the long-term care division. This occurred because prior to July 2007, the long-term care division had little, if any, nursing staff. And when the department split and the long-term care division was created, it received 50 or 60 nursing staff within the state. So it was determined that the long-term care division would do the new level of care determinations. The PACE organizations have expressed concern that this transition has resulted in an increase in denials and deferrals. In response, the following steps have been taken to date by DHCS to respond to the concerns of PACE organizations, and I will fully admit these are not the end-all and be-all. The additional steps will need to be taken. 1, eligibility determination and LIF level of care certification standards are made an open and ongoing agenda item at the quarterly CalPACE meeting, so we appreciate CalPACE doing that for us. 2, in October 2009, we conducted a statewide training in Sacramento to further educate PACE organizations on level of care determinations. 3, nursing staff have visited each PACE organization to provide technical assistance on level of care. And 4, we're working with administrative law judges at the Department of Social Services to help them better understand the PACE program and level of care issues.
Excuse me if I can just interrupt, because the ALJs are now seeing appeals to the denials. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, okay. Yes. But they have not seen these higher levels of denials in the past, so that's why we have to sort of train everybody that might be handling.
Yes.
Okay. But do you have an idea how many of those cases are overturned? How many denial? What's the percentage denial that's overturned?
I believe that's only around 20%.
Yes. So 20% of the denials are overturned.
Yes.
Okay. Which is a little bit different than 3%. I'm getting some of my percentages mixed up.
Okay.
I thought I heard earlier that it was 3% of the presumptive eligibles that were then determined to be ineligible, but now it's 20%.
That's a different.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, got it. So we're comparing apples and oranges then.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So as mentioned, we do have a level of care issue paper that was prepared by CalPACE, submitted to our office on March 15th. It is in final stages of review by the department, and we anticipate having an official position on it soon and having a conversation with CalPACE. This concludes my prepared testimony, and I'll be happy to entertain some questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you. I do have some questions, I think, because I'm not sure I quite have this all in my head here. What was just referenced about the change in who was actually doing the eligibility or the monitoring
Level of care
determinations went from one part of the Department of Health Services to another, and that was because the department split into health and public health?
The department split to health and public health.
That was July 1 of 2007.
Correct.
Yes.
The long-term care division was formed in that, and parts of what was the medical operations division with nursing staff joined long-term care division based upon the functions
that I do remember. But then what is it about the nurses that migrated over that made the difference in terms of who was doing this determination? Did they were not doing the determination?
They were not.
Before?
No, the determination was being done by the Medi-Cal field offices, and then the responsibility was levied upon the long-term care division in September of 2007.
So we kind of went from. Let me see if I can craft this carefully. It used to be more of a community-based or field-based determination that then became more centralized with this shift in who was doing the level of care determination.
It was primarily done by our San Bernardino field office with some support from the Sacramento Medi-Cal field office, and then that all transitioned to the long-term care division here in Sacramento. Yes.
And then were these same, so these nurses were not doing this kind of determination.
Different.
What level of professional assessment? Was that a social work assessment that was being done in the field prior to?
No.
Who did? Oh, they were nurses as well.
Exact same state classification.
Okay, so it was nurses to nurses. Okay, but it was just a different group of nurses.
Correct.
I mean, I love the nurses, by the way, but
Right.
I do have a fondness for my own profession first. So, okay, so I guess I'm still trying to understand, again, what the presentation of this data would indicate is that if there have been a higher percentage of denials that result in a higher level of administrative, appeals and so forth, which also lead to further delays in providing services that we ultimately might need to be providing anyway, have there been any cost determinants review on what? No.
I did get that question, and
Yes.
I have not had the opportunity to delve into what the cost is of the actual
Okay.
administrative hearing.
How could we help find out what that cost is? I mean, but the request has already been made.
I'll take an 8th day in the
Now I know the feeling. Okay, and this is actually only, this trend has been seen since 2008?
2008.
Okay, so we are coming up on what, a year and a half worth of, was it, no, it was mid 2008?
My
Oh, no, it was
understanding was
January. Okay, so we're coming up on 2 years. Is this an intern project that we could help you with? No, I don't know. You know, I would certainly be very interested in finding out what the actual costs of this change have been, because as Assemblymember Lowenthal and all of us that serve are looking at another very difficult budget season. And last year's low-hanging fruit, if you could even call any of $60 billion in reductions, were really low-hanging fruit. We are going to need to look at, how money is being spent. And as I've said, I'm getting kind of tired of hearing that there's no money. I think there is money. I just think that the money that we have is maybe not being spent in the most judicious way, especially in this climate. So, I look forward to continuing to engage in this discussion and see if we can help each other. I think ultimately I don't think any one of us in this room or anyone watching today is in disagreement that we want to do the best for those out there in the community that are depending on us.
Yes, we do.
So I do not doubt that. But I think that we need to do better. And if we can help do that, we would certainly like to partner with you on that. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Since Ms. Lowenthal was responsible for one of the bills that has made things better.
No, Madam Chair,
right?
I would just echo your sentiments. I came in late because I had another committee hearing, but listening to the numbers of people that are rejected and in tremendous need, it's very worrisome. I think the whole goal of the PACE program was to integrate those services and try to get people in more rapidly, and it just seems, according to what you're saying, Madam Chair, that there's still a lack of integration. There's still, you were trying to find out if there was any duplication there, but it's still not reaching all of the people that need those services. And I think what we're seeing is there must be some sort of administrative barrier to this, and we're trying to find out exactly what it is. Is that right?
Right. That's exactly right. Because if I am hearing correctly, it sounded to me like we were proceeding along sort of a presumptive eligibility model that would then be denied at a certain point in time. That would then, I don't know how the payment would be returned to the state, but that it seemed like it would be that it would be lower cost to continue on the presumptive eligibility model instead of doing the, it just seems like the costs have been driven up by some change. And was that change?
It's my understanding that presumptive
federal
eligibility was given when the Medi-Cal field offices had a huge backlog, and so the PACE organizations were allowed to enroll. And under federal law, the state administrative agency needs to ensure a level of care.
Sure.
So we do need to do it at some point. So
Okay.
I believe it was decided it was better to do it up front.
I see. Well, I'd be very interested to, get a little bit more background. I have been a student of all this for about 15 years, but this one I was not following. So I'd be very interested to know what you just mentioned, that the presumptive eligibility path was taken because of the backlog. And so this would be a purely kind of administrative rather than a legal stricture.
Right.
Okay, so it is possible that presumptive eligibility could be restored if we could find that. Okay, I wonder if that had something to do with change in the governor's. I don't know. Anyway, we won't get too far ahead of ourselves, or I won't. But I'd be very interested to get some background and timing on that, and to determine when that whole change, or why that change occurred. Because clearly, if we're showing that we're driving up costs, with unnecessary hospitalizations or premature institutionalization, then that is actually contrary to Olmstead and contrary to just good fiscal policy in the state. So, stay tuned. We'll keep talking. Let's do this now. I'd like to, if there are no other comments from my wonderful colleague Bonnie Lowenthal, let's invite any public comment from anyone that wishes to make a comment who isn't not otherwise already spoken. I don't know. We have managed to get a new microphone in here thanks to the sergeants, and because I had complained that in my first hearing as chair, all of the wonderful people who were here lined up for Elder Economic Index had to lean over to make testimony. And aside from not wanting you all to get mooned during the testimony, I thought that, my goodness, this is the Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care. Should we not be in the most accessible and comfortable
age with
hearing
dignity
room?
and with dignity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And although you might be mooning in a certain direction there, since I think there is an office over there that could stand some of that. But what I'd like to say is one of my commitments as chair of this committee, however long I may be here, depending on my comments, I do hope that we will improve the committee. Not that this hasn't been a wonderful committee room, but that we need to improve where this committee meets. It does not appear to me to be the most accessible or the most comfortable committee hearing room in this building, and so we'll be working on that. But the best we could do today, thank you, sergeants, is to get us.
We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Chairman Yamada, Gary Passmore with the Congress of California Seniors. And I'm wondering, since we've got so many PACE providers in the room as we have, if I could ask one question that would help me, and I think some of you maybe to connect dots. Sure. As I looked at the activities, the services that PACE provides in Dr. Phillips' presentation, it looked to me as though, in fact, I think she classified them as home care services, some what I would call ancillary medical services. I think the state has supported them as optional Medi-Cal services in two categories, both those that were eliminated and those that are on the chopping block. Care management, which we have with MSSP but lost with linkages, and caregiver resource support, caregiver support. And in some ways, it seems to me that the PACE programs are operating sort of like the monasteries did during the English Civil War. They've got a big wall around them, and they're able to continue providing these services because of the fact that their state funding is tied to nursing home rates rather than to home and community-based service availability and those rates. And I'm just curious about how some of these folks feel their programs are going to change if the state proceeds along the path that it's going right now of eliminating so many of the services that they provide out in the community to people who aren't in PACE. You know, will the 15,000 or so ADHD clients that could go into a nursing home show up at the door of OnLock? And if they do, what does that do to their programs? Because the world in which they're operating is changing enormously right now. Yes. So, I mean, I'm not trying to take over your meeting, but it seems like a big picture thing that it would help you guys to know what's happening.
Well, on that note, I mean, I don't mind inviting maybe Mr. Edmondson back to provide a little global or big picture perspective. Sure.
The question embodies a couple of issues. One is rate setting, and we're not here to talk about that, but I will mention a few words. CalPACE will be shortly presenting our proposal for how to model the rates that PACE receives, and it will be inclusive of home and community-based rating as well as people that are in nursing homes. So that's just one side issue. In terms of the impact on reductions in home and community-based services, right. I mean, we've been thinking about this. I think Altamed and others of the PACE group are in a broader spectrum of care delivery. ONLOC does have an active senior center and housing, but it is not in the ADHC world per se.
Well, and there's a moratorium on that for new licensure anyway for Medi-Cal.
So we really do expect to see, if these programs are in fact eliminated, we do expect to see increased pressure on PACE from two standpoints. One is additional eligible people, and the second will be to define the program. And I think we're all looking at whether PACE itself needs to perhaps broaden its spectrum, break out of the monastery walls. I think that this is a national issue as well. It's not just California. And I think that what will happen over time, over the next probably year or two, the pressure from rurals will produce new regulations because it cannot be as center-based as it has been in the past. So I think you'll see a broadening of PACE per se. You'll see PACE organizations not as PACE get into other things. PACE Light is talked about, periodically. So I think you will see some of those changes. I want to say, though, that the CalPACE membership, ONLOC in particular, has been very supportive of not eliminating these programs. I mean, we believe, first off, as you know from earlier discussion, PACE eligibility is a fairly limited spectrum of frail seniors. So the broad brush context is very needy, and PACE per se cannot meet those needs. Now, there will be some eligibles that will wind up at the door for sure. So an answer.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Passmore and Mr. Edmondson. Thank you. Any other comments as we wrap up? Because actually, I am right now on my way to the UC Davis Medical School Department of Internal Medicine, where we have been celebrating now, I think, our 8th year of the UC Davis Mini Medical School on aging. And that starts... I will say hello to Dr. McLeod. I think you know Dr. Michael McLeod and others there. So, yes. So, I want to thank everyone for coming this afternoon to participate in this important discussion. Thank all of the staff and also the members who are able to join us. And let's keep the pace up. How's that? Thanks a lot.